The Holy Gospel, according to Matthew, the 9th chapter. Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, and proclaiming the good news of the kingdom, and curing every disease and every sickness. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them, because they were harassed and helpless like sheep without a shepherd. Then he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest." Then Jesus summoned his 12 disciples and gave them authority over unclean spirits to cast them out and to cure every disease and every sickness. These are the names of the 12 apostles. First, Simon, also known as Peter, and his brother Andrew. James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. Philip and Bartholomew. Thomas and Matthew the tax collector. James, son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus. Simon the Canaanian, and Judas Iscariot, the one who betrayed him. These 12 Jesus sent out with the following instructions. Go nowhere among the Gentiles, and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. As you go, proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. You received without payment, give without payment. Take no gold or silver or copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, or 2 tunics or sandals or a staff, for laborers deserve their food. Whatever town or village you enter, find out who in it is worthy, and stay there until you leave. As you enter the house, greet it. If the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you. If anyone will not welcome you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet as you leave that house or town. Truly, I tell you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town. See, I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. So be as wise as serpents and innocent as doves. Beware of them, for they will hand you over to councils and flog you in their synagogues, and you will be dragged before governors and kings because of me, as a testimony to them and the Gentiles. When they hand you over, do not worry about how you are to speak or what you are to say, for what you are to say will be given to you at that time. For it is not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. And children will rise against parents and have them put to death, and you will be hated by all because of my name. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly I tell you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The Gospel of the Lord. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my spirit be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. The first few sentences of this gospel reading list everything that Jesus has been doing since the beginning of his ministry. He went about all the cities and villages, he taught in the synagogues, he proclaimed the good news to the kingdom, and he cured every disease and every sickness. That is quite the expansive to-do list. And the more people Jesus healed, it seemed that the more people showed up in need of healing. Jesus does not want to turn anyone away, but he is just one person. So he gathers his disciples together and they have what you might call a staff meeting. First, Jesus outlines the problems that they need to solve. The harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Then they pray about it. They ask God to send more people to do the work that Jesus is doing. Then Jesus discerns the solution to the problem, and he begins to equip the disciples to go out and do what Jesus himself has been doing all along. I imagine that the disciples were not thrilled about this turn of events. First of all, Jesus gives them a myriad of instructions that do not sound very fun. Cure the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out demons. None of those are easy, relaxing jobs. Furthermore, do all these things expecting no payment in return. Take nothing with you. Then, besides the instructions for their actual work, Jesus gives them a list of warnings. I am sending you out like sheep into the midst of wolves. You will be handed over to councils, you will be flogged, you will be dragged before governors and kings. Your family will turn against you. You will be hated by all because of me. And the work will never be finished. You will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Does it sound like fun yet? I especially like the way Jesus says when they hand you over and when they persecute you, not if they hand you over or if they persecute you. The disciples were probably saying, now wait just 1 minute. We just began to follow you a few short chapters ago. We have not learned everything yet that we need to learn. We are merely interns. And this is so overwhelming. Will we have to do this for the rest of our lives? How can you expect us to do this work if even all of us working together will never be able to finish it? But when we read this text today, I think that we have a tendency to idealize the struggles of the disciples and transfer that to our own lives. Everyone loves a good underdog story, and we like to think that we are the underdogs. We are sheep in the midst of wolves. It is us against the world. Everyone will hate us for our faith, but we are as innocent as doves. Jesus' words get twisted, and we feel that it is up to us to go out into the world and convert all of those sinners and tell them all the horrible things that will happen if they do not change their ways. Then we can shake the dust from our feet and act like we've done our job while we go back to our churches and complain about all the things that are wrong in the world today, and how if only everyone saw things our way and lived good Christian lives, things would be better. But everything is not better. Even just the beginning of the year 2020 can show us that. All the way back in January, if we can remember that far, wildfires were ravaging Australia because of the entire world's inability to care for the earth. Then we began to hear about a pandemic. At first, even though it was bad in some places, it was not affecting us, so it didn't seem like much to worry about. But by March, it was here, and it is real. And it is stretching our ability to care for people we have never met or even those we love. If we have learned anything about ourselves during the past few difficult months, it is that when we love and care for other people actually requires inconveniences and sacrifices on our own parts, we are not very good at it. We do not want to stay isolated. We do not want things to be closed. We do not want to socially distance. We do not want to wear masks. The disciples were fine with just following Jesus, but when it came time for them to do the actual work of loving others, they had trouble, and so do we. And finally, within the past few weeks, as though a pandemic was not enough, we have been reminded just how much racism has become embedded in our society and how much work it will take to get rid of it. Just these past few months have shown us that the world is quite broken. And even though we want to be the ones who are innocent as doves, it is clear that we have all contributed to every one of the problems our world is currently facing. Our failure to care for the earth, our failure to comply with social distancing, our failure to stand up against systems of injustice is all part of why things are the way they are. We cannot continue to put ourselves in the role of innocent doves or the good sheep. The work that Jesus and the disciples started so long ago has not only not been finished, but somewhere along the line, the authority that Jesus gave us has gone to our heads, so that our shake the dust from our feet attitude is not only not accomplishing the work of the reign of God, and in fact, it has become an excuse for our inability to do what Jesus has called us to do. We look at both the problems in the world and the problems within ourselves that contribute to the destruction of the earth, to the spread of global illness, and to racism and other forms of oppression, and they appear so unsolvable that we say, well, I have done all that I can do, and then we give up. Shaking the dust off our feet has become the excuse for complacency, for silence about things that matter, for apathy, and even for laziness. Because, like the disciples, we hear the things that Jesus has called us to do, and we feel convicted instead of empowered. And we feel overwhelmed about the seeming impossibility of the task set before us. But part of the reason we feel overwhelmed is because we are taking on more than what Jesus called the disciples to do in the first place. If we listen to Jesus' words and commands, we can see that Jesus is never promoting an attitude that is us against the world. He is not sending the disciples out to condemn and judge a world that is so awful it is beyond the ability to be saved. From the beginning, Jesus has the opposite attitude. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion for them. The thing that causes Jesus to get his disciples together for their staff meeting in the first place is not that the world is out to get them. It's that Jesus has compassion for so many people who have so many different needs. Then when he speaks to his disciples, he says, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. His word choice is important. He calls the world his harvest. He isn't asking for help with pulling weeds. He wants the disciples to view the world and the people in it as ripe fruit. Good people with the potential to provide for others in abundance. His list of instructions to the disciples is similar. He gives them authority over unclean spirits and to cure every disease and sickness. He orders them to proclaim the good news. The kingdom of heaven has come near. That is the only thing that they are ordered to say. It is more about what the disciples do rather than say that will reinforce their message. The kingdom of heaven has come near, so all people, and especially those who are most often pushed aside by the world, can be healed, can be included, and can have enough. Jesus' warnings to the disciple are not because Jesus believes that only his disciples have it right and the evil world will come after them. His warnings are because he knows more than anyone else how difficult the work is. He does not mince words for the disciples. He wants to warn them not only that people will fight against the idea that the kingdom of heaven includes those whom society would rather ignore, but that even the disciples themselves will be tempted to make the good news exclusive and to judge or condemn those who do not agree with them. We are all sheep and wolves together, or as Luther put it, we are all saints and sinners. There is not an us and a them. The world is not out to get us. We are all fighting together against the problems of our day, the destruction of the earth, the loss of hundreds of thousands of lives worldwide to a disease, and attitudes of racism and oppression. And those problems are not only out in the world, but they are also within our own selves. Jesus looked out at the world and had compassion. Yes, the world has sinned and continues to sin, and Jesus knows that. Otherwise, he would not have warned his disciples so much about what to expect. But Jesus also refused to believe that the world was beyond saving. He saw the world and each person in it as ripe fruit ready to be harvested. He saw each person as worthy of being redeemed. Then he called the disciples to go out and proclaim that message of redemption to every person in every city. He calls us to do the same. He has, through his life, death, and resurrection, equipped us to do the same. We are called to confront the evils in the world and in ourselves by proclaiming the truth that in the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, the kingdom of heaven has come near. We are called to point to the presence of the risen Christ in the world, and then to cast out the demons of disease and environmental destruction and racism, even and especially when that means acknowledging the ways that we ourselves have contributed to them. This work may sound overwhelming, but we do not need to be overwhelmed because of the very good news that we are being called to proclaim. The kingdom of heaven has come near. Jesus is already at work in the world doing all of these things. It is not up to us to pronounce a final judgment upon the world or the people in it, including ourselves. Jesus will take care of the saving. In fact, he already has. Jesus' words at the end of this gospel reading, "You will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes," are not meant to be demoralizing. They remind us that we are not the ones who are supposed to finish the job. We can shake the dust off our feet and let Jesus take over completely at the appropriate time. But that time is not yet. For now, until then, we are sent out, proclaiming, casting out, and healing in our own lives and in the world. Amen.